Hey guys, today I want to talk about Google Forms and all of the options and features that it offers for teachers. So it'll be a little bit longer of a video this time, but I'll try to keep it as concise as possible. By the way, if you hear any piano or singing in the background, I apologize. My wife is teaching virtual voice lessons upstairs. Hopefully it won't be too distracting. So anyway, I'm in here in Google Forms, and I'm in an actual assessment that I've used in years past, and want to just kind of run through some features in an actual active form so that you can see kind of what it will look like after you get some student responses. So here's an assessment I've created, and I've got the title up here. This part is you don't have the option to get rid of this part. So you've got the title, you can add a description if you want, and there's a field for email address. This shows up because I've checked that I want it to collect email addresses. Be careful with this because if your email addresses are coded, it's not going to give you a name. So if you just collect that and you think you're good and you don't need to collect names for entering in the gradebook or whatever, you're sorely mistaken. I've made that mistake, learned that the hard way. So what I do instead is I have two fields because I like them in separate cells, first name and last name. And I've made both of those required questions. So I type in first name and then I chose short answer. Um, I don't have the answer key. It's 0 points because it's not something I want them to get credit for, but I did make it required. So checking this means that they can't submit it without giving me their name, which I think is an important feature. And then I have last name as a separate question. So then I add my questions and I have them as multiple choice. It's super easy to add a question. This little toolbar kind of follows you as you scroll, and I just add a question right here. You can also import questions if you're duplicating elements from other assessments or something. You can add a title and description if you have subsections. You can also add an entirely new section which will show up as a separate page for users as they're kind of taking the assessment. So that's helpful. You can also add video or image here too. All right, so when you add a new question, I'm just going to show you what this looks like. Click the plus icon, and sorry, it went up here. It goes from like the last question you interacted with, it puts it right below that. That's why it jumped up to a weird place. So then I can type my question in here, and it defaulted to multiple choice because that's what most of my questions are. Sorry, I put it kind of a weird place, but this gives me the opportunity to show you how easy it is to relocate them. So you just grab it and drag it down wherever you want it to go, so that it ends up in the right spot. So if you put it in the wrong spot, don't freak out. It's really easy to just drag and move around. So you put your question, and you can change the question type here. Lots of different options here: short answer, paragraph, check boxes. So that's like select all that apply, drop down, file upload. Lots of cool choices. Uh, and then once I get my options in here, nice feature, we can, if we have like, well, let me just show you. So if we have multiple options, like you're copying and pasting from somewhere, let's say these are my correct answer options. I could even copy this from a PDF, and then I could select the first one here and just do Control V, paste. And those are separate lines, so it actually grabs these extra ones, but it's nice that it put it as separate answer options, so it saves me a little bit of time with formatting. I'm just going to remove these ones I don't want, and then I have those four options kind of auto-filled. So that can be a nice feature. Try pasting it in if you're copying it from something else. Try just pasting, and it may save you time instead of having to click on each line. Cool. So then once you have that in there, you can make it required or not. You can delete questions. You can duplicate questions if they're similar and you just have small variables to change. And then you can go to your answer key, and it kind of changes the view for that section, this box that is the question. And I can change how many points I want it to be. I can also indicate which one is the correct answer. So I just select it like that. You'll notice a check mark, green check mark shows it's the right answer. And I can even type in answer feedback if I want that to show for students after they answer it. So a lot of cool features here. Um, Very simple, very intuitive, easy to use. I'm going to delete this because I don't want to keep that question. And I want to show you the responses side of things because this is this is the part that's the most exciting for me, and the part where we can really maximize the functionality of Google Forms. So we go to responses, separate tab, lots of cool features here. So you have an overall summary. You can look at question by question feedback, and you can look at individual responses. And I'm not going to look at all of this for the sake of student confidentiality, but I do want to point out a couple of things. So you have this insights here that gives you the average, median. I don't know why you really want to know the median, but it has it in there. The range. So that's good information to know. It also gives you frequently missed questions, and that's super helpful. You can click on that and dig into a little bit more information. Um, my favorite feature of this, though, is this link right here. Now, I've already created a Google Sheets that is tied to this assessment, but the first time you go in here and you see this icon, it says something like create Google Sheet or something like, or export responses to Google Sheets. You'll click on that and then it'll automatically take you to a new Google Sheets that exports all of the student responses. And I'll show you in a minute why that's going to be helpful. I'm going to pause right now so that I can go to the sheet and then block out student information. So hang on just a sec. Okay, here we are on the exported Google Sheets. This has the responses, and you'll see that in the title, for the assessment that is named this. And Google titles it that by default, and it'll put this Google Sheets in the same folder that your assessment lives, which is really nice. So anyway, I see all the responses here, and I want to show you a couple of things. This spreadsheet is very manipulated from what Google gave me originally. So I'll show you the original view and I'll show you the way I have it. I'm actually going to start with the way that I have it now so that you can see the value of this. Then I'll show you kind of how I set it up. Okay, so this last line, you'll notice that I have kind of input data here in row 14, but then I'm missing the subscores, and I'll explain why that is. In these other lines, I have subscores. So depending on how you want to use this, I like to subscore a lot. So I'll have multiple standards in my assessments or multiple performance indicators, and then I'll provide subscores for those specific skills. So you can see here that I've assessed a variety of grammar skills, and I wanted to generate subscores for comma splices and fused sentences. And you can see the value of this for like the student in line 7, where this student totally gets comma splices and fused sentences, pretty much gets apostrophes, pretty much hyphens and dashes, pretty much tone, but concision, this student totally missed the boat. So that's great feedback to be able to target that skill for that student and differentiate effectively. So the way that I do that is I actually have all the responses hidden. So I'm going to unhide those. I can just click on these arrows. Okay, so I've expanded all of the stuff that I had hidden before, and this shows the extent of all of the responses that Google automatically generated for me. You can see the total score, the timestamp for all of those, every single response for the entire Google Forms, the entire assessment. But you can also see where I've made some changes. So this trick really works best if you have your subsections kind of together. If you don't, it gets messy and complicated. So for all of my comma splices and fused sentences questions, those are really my first 5 questions after the name and that kind of stuff. So for those 5, I then, after the responses were generated, I added a column. And again, you can just do that by right-clicking up here and going to insert one right or left, wherever you need it. So I just did insert one right, and then I titled it comma splices and fused sentences. That's my topic. And then it allowed me to manually enter the subscores for that section. There's not a really clean way to do this, a really quick way to do this. You can pull some kind of wizardry and create really complex formulas that automatically generate this for you. But unless you use the responses all the time, it's probably not worth your time to figure it out. It's very time consuming. I'm hoping that Google will add this feature later to create subscores, and I'm going to actually submit that feedback to them. They're very receptive to feedback, actually, especially from professional teachers. So anyway, what I did instead as a kind of simplified workaround is I just added this column and I just scored it myself. And to make it easier for myself, I kind of created an answer key. I could have added another row at the top or something of the actual answer key, but instead I looked at Google or at student responses, and I just highlighted in green the ones that were correct. In this case, this kid got all 5 questions correct, so I just highlighted that green. So in my mind, that's the answer key, and then I scored the other ones against that. In some of them, I didn't have the same student get all of them correct, so I had to kind of go up and down a little bit. And here I had multiple correct answers. So you can see certain ones are multiple ones are highlighted. So anyway, that's how I kind of created my subscores. And then I did have to go and manually score each of those. But it was the most efficient way for me, considering that I only had, you know, 12 responses or whatever. So you can see that this student responded after I was done scoring all of the other items or all of the other responses. The really cool thing that Google does here is that they anchor the responses in the same way that the other ones were. Even though I added a column here, it goes, oh, that wasn't part of our thing, so we're just going to leave it blank. And then it just stays blank until I do the subscore. So you can do this and kind of just update your subscores as you go. Really nice feature. And then for me, the way I use this, I don't actually want to see the individual responses normally unless I'm scoring. When I'm entering these in the gradebook, I want to hide all of these. So to hide them, you can just click the top, and I'm going to hold down Shift to select multiple, and then I'll click column F here. So I have these all selected, the entire column. Then I'm going to right click anywhere in the highlighted portion, right click, and then hide columns F through J. So then all I see is that subscore. So then I just did that for all of the sections, and it gives me a really clean subscore. So all I see is the student names, the total scores, whatever I want really, and my subscore sections once I finish hiding all of these. Very convenient, gives me a nice clean sheet that I can work from when I'm putting these in my gradebook. Okay, a few other things that I want to show you. We're in back in the assessment now, and I want to show you some of the settings that we can change. So we can make it look cute and customize the theme and preview it, see what it looks like on the student side and stuff. We're going to skip through that because that's really intuitive. You can figure that out yourself. But I do want to look at the settings. So we'll click the gear icon, and we can see all of the options here that we can manipulate for how the forms appear for students or respondents. So we have general. As I mentioned before, I checked collect email addresses. You don't have to do that, but part of the reason that I do that is that I don't always want students to be able to see their grades immediately. And if I want to release grades manually, I have to check this. Response receipts, I don't generally do that, but that tells students that I got it. So it just kind of confirms that for them. I limit to one response in the case of most of my assessments. If I want to give students a chance to respond something multiple times, I'll usually copy the form or copy the assessment and give them a second chance at it. The reason that I do this is from experience, sometimes, I'll have so much stuff to do during a PD or something that I'll forget whether I responded to a Google Forms. And students do the same thing. So if I limit it to one response, then as they're dealing with all of their classes and going back and forth, if they try to click on it and take it again, then it'll say you've already responded to this form, and it won't even let them do it again. I think that's a pretty helpful feature so that they don't accidentally take it multiple times. On a quiz, I definitely don't want them to edit it after they submit. And you can let them see the summary charts and text responses and stuff if you want to. That can give them some feedback on how they've performed on this assessment. So then you have the presentation. If you have a long assessment, especially if you have multiple sections, sometimes it's helpful to show the progress bar so they don't get demoralized and go, oh, this is going on forever. For me, my assessments are usually short, so I usually only have one screen, and that becomes unnecessary. Shuffle question order is a really important one to talk about because I've made this mistake before where I've had an assessment where I ask them their name, first name, last name, and then I'll check this option, and then it shuffles that into the assessment, which is super weird. So they'll have, several PSAT questions, and then question 7 will be last name, and they're like, what? So I don't shuffle the question order anymore when I have the names on as the first 2 questions because it gets really weird. You can put your own confirmation message in there. Good job, you finished, whatever. And then for quizzes, oh, by the way, this is grayed out because I said you can only submit one response. Then for quizzes, there are specific features for that. So make this a quiz. If you're doing it as a quiz and assessment, you definitely want this to be checked because this enables the answer key feature. And when you have the answer key feature enabled, you can program in the right answer so that it grades it for you. This is a huge time saver. So definitely make it a quiz. Definitely utilize the answer key feature. Saves you tons of time. And then you can decide whether to release the grade immediately or later after you manually review it. I do this one because, especially with remote learning, I don't want students to be able to, I don't know, maybe this is overkill, but I don't want them to be able to like get together in one another's houses and take this next to each other and see the right answers immediately, or be able to kind of collude on that. So instead, I want to release the grade later after manual review. And then if it's a timed thing, I'll give them a day to respond to it, and then I'll set the deadline. Then I'll close responses, or I'll take the link down or whatever, and then I'll give a video. I'll post a video of like a walkthrough, like a Loom like this. I'll walk through the questions. Here's why this one is what it is, or whatever. And then I'll post that only to students who've taken the assessment, which is a great feature that we've talked about on Google Classroom. You can actually select which students get to see that post. And so if I only had half the class take the assessment, I'll only post my walkthrough video for those students. And then there's less likelihood that students who haven't taken it will get to see all the answers and then submit their own quiz with a perfect grade. Um, it's never going to be perfect with remote learning. We won't ever be able to totally avoid cheating, but this kind of helps with it. And then you can select whether respondents can see missed questions, correct answers, point values, etc. Um, I didn't check point values only because all my questions are worth 1 point, and I don't want them to worry about, wait, is there some question in here that's worth more? But if you have different point values, that can be helpful. Okay, one final feature to show you. So we're going to get out of the settings. We'll just hit cancel here. You would hit save if you'd made any changes. I want to show you how to send the form. So we click send, and we have a variety of ways we can do this. This is pretty fancy. You can embed it in a web page. Um, most of you are not going to end up doing that. You can do email, type in email addresses here, or you can use a link. That's what most people are going to end up doing. Now, if there's any chance that the students are going to have to type this link, like if you're in a conference or a training and you want to post this on the wall and people are going to be typing it in, make sure you click shorten URL. It makes it way easier to type, way shorter. It's still pretty long, but it's a lot better than it was. If people aren't going to be handwriting or typing this, then there's no need for this. So let's go back to this email page because I want to show you a couple other things. So you can change your subject and write a message if you're emailing it. But there's one important little thing at the bottom here, and that is add collaborators. So by default, because I marked this as a quiz, this link that I'm sharing or the email that I send or whatever, that's going to show up as a quiz, and people aren't going to be able to edit it. They're just going to be able to answer the questions and kind of respond to the assessment. But if I want to add collaborators, if I'm co-teaching a class or if I'm working together with other professionals to create something for a PD or whatever, I'm going to do that here. And that will allow them to edit. So I can type in their names, or I can select their permissions. Actually, they won't necessarily be able to edit. So here's a teacher that I work with. Great lady, she can view the file, but she can't edit it because I thought she may want to make a copy of her own, or she may just kind of want to see what I'm doing because we're teaching similar classes. And then I can also have a look here and set broad permissions as I would with a Google Doc or slides or sheets or anything like that. Okay, that's it. Sorry that was a lot, but hopefully you found something in there that was helpful to you and relevant to your practice. Thanks a lot and good luck.